Hello and welcome to what is the second of a sort of line of series, if that's what we're going to call it. So today we are going to be talking to Terry from Owls Online, not Hells Online, as I got very confused by, Owls Online. And we're going to be looking ahead and getting an insight into our latest signing, Jaden Brown. So Jaden Brown, who was at Sheffield Wednesday for the past 2 seasons, I do believe. Hence why we got Terry on board. So, Terry, I guess the kind of headline question is, who is Jaden Brown?
Well, we saw 2 sides of Jaden Brown, being completely honest with you. First signed, if the impression was of that first probably dozen or so games, then I'd say the outlook wasn't very bright, to be honest. When he first came in, he was a signing that I think it reflected where Sheffield Wednesday was as a club, who we could sign, the transfer embargoes, that sort of thing, was feeling the effect of that. And we weren't disappointed. I mean, let's be honest, he started his career at Spurs and he was at Huddersfield, so he's not, obviously there's a footballer in there, but when he first started, the impressions were quite poor. He seemed like a player who wasn't sure of his best position. He wasn't the best tackler. It wasn't good, I'll be honest. However, I do like, as much as that sounds really negative, there were, for me, I do try and be as positive as I can, and there were some glimpses within there that you could see that there was something. Although it took a while to get there, and his chances in the team were a little bit sporadic. I mean, he played just over 30 games for us in the end, including substitute appearances. By the end, certainly towards the back end of last season, he was showing what it was far more than a glimpse. He played an important part in the run-in to the playoffs. He scored against Peterborough, not in the playoff game, but in the game in March leading up to the playoffs. And then sort of came back into the squad, stayed in and around, played, I think, 6 or 7 games toward the end. Played pretty well against Derby in the game that sort of sealed our playoff fate and Derby's playoff fate not being in there, and then set up the 5th goal in that absolute epic against Peterborough. So while his start was less than positive, his end was very positive. So I think if you can get more of the Jaden Brown we saw at the end, then I think Lincoln fans will be pretty happy with him, to be honest.
Well, that's certainly good to know. I guess kind of along that line, and I know this is a very simple linear question to what is actually is quite layered. Would you have taken him on for another year at Wednesday?
In League One, perhaps. I don't think he's a championship player right now. I mean, he's still only a young lad, so there's a lot of time for him to grow. He's far from the finished article, I think. Right now, I don't think he's right for the championship. But as I said, towards the back end of last year, he proved that he was, he could play an important part in what was a very important part of our season, and not be overawed and certainly not look out of place. So, with that in mind, I think had we not gone up and achieved what we did, then I wouldn't have been disappointed.
That's really positive, and it's something that for those that have looked on Twitter and such will have seen that kind of an opinion very much put around on Twitter, and it's very odd, as I'm sure you'll very much be aware, that people can be positive on football Twitter, especially about a player who's maybe not had as great an impact as what you'd maybe hoped when he signed, but there seems to be quite a sort of liking to him, and people seem to think that he can come on to become the player that everybody hopes, and hopefully he can do that at Lincoln.
Yeah, it'd be nice. As I said, he's gone from showing very small glimpses of potential to showing a lot more of it, and almost leaving you still wanting more, but in a much better sense. Is I'm just thinking in particular of 2 incidents towards the back end of the season where, one, he ran the full length of the pitch to come back and make a tackle to try and and stop arguably a certain goal in a game in them last few games of the season, and then the composure he showed to pass the ball when being in the box in injury time, when we're chasing that fifth goal against Peterborough, many players would have had a shot. And to be honest, you probably wouldn't have argued against him doing it, him in particular doing it. There's not often defenders, or attacking fullbacks, if you will, get into that position and sort of think, and having the wherewithal to look up and pass the ball rather than thinking, I'm in a chance to shoot, I'm just going to shoot. But it was more a considered pass than anything else, and I think that speaks volumes to what he can do. And I think he needs a run of consistent games, and I think that's also the key as to why we saw the best out of him towards the back end of his time with Wednesdays. He had a relatively consistent run of games in from like March to May. I think he played 8 or 9 times, which is more than he'd done. Well, is equal to what he'd done over the rest of the season from August to March. He'd been a bit part player up till then. So then to be in and have that, like I say, 8 or 9 games toward the end of the season just shows that what he can do if he's given that chance.
That's, like I say, that's ultimately really, really promising. So you sort of touched on it there when you mentioned that he's sort of an attacking wing back. So just looking now at the kind of profile of Jaden Brown, what kind of profile wing back are we getting? Are we getting one that's going to be much more defensive, suited to a more flat back five, or we're going to get one that is really going to be able to push forward and play wide in something like a 3-5-2?
It's an interesting one, really, because I've alluded to sort of like both sides of the game already, where, as I said, setting up the goal against Peter and then previously running back and making a last-ditch tackle. However, I do think his strengths lie in a more attacking sense. He's not, in terms of his frame, he's not the biggest guy. He's quite rangy, if you want to put it that way. He's quite long-legged. He's quick. I think he's not quick. I don't think he's particularly quick over distance, but he's quite explosive. So I think he's better suited to a team going forward than one with flat back four, as you suggest. And I mean, there's even an argument from some that he might become a winger in the end, rather than a defender. Okay. So I suppose, again, that just probably accentuates his attacking benefits more than his defensive ones from that sense. But of course, we played wing backs, and there was other players mainly last season relied on to supply crosses. We didn't see that much of him crossing the ball in that sense, but like I say, he's very attack-minded. He likes to get forward.
Well, like I say, again, that's something else that sounds like it could really suit our system. Obviously, our recruitment team have seemingly made some really good moves this summer, and hopefully this is another sort of in that line. So they're only going to sign players that suit the system they want to play, but there's a potentiality that we're going to set up in a 3-5-2. It's what some people are kind of predicting. We did it in the final game of last season, or at least for the final sort of half of the last game of last season. So if he was kind of the only real wide player on the left-hand side, then that's somewhere that maybe he can really make that space on the pitch his own for the next season, which would be really good.
Yeah, maybe. Potentially. Obviously, that's not a position alien to him, as most people know. We played with a back three and wing backs most of last season anyway. And when he played, the majority of the time he was there, although there were the odd occasion where he was deployed as the left centre back out of emergency rather than him having that. And I must admit that worried me a little bit. As I said, he's not the biggest of guys and not the strongest in that sense. But again, I like to accentuate the positives, and he certainly didn't just take it lightly and give up. And it wasn't I can't do it. He at least gave it a go. But it's obvious he's not a centre back. So, but I mean, if you do play a 3-5-2, it is something he's familiar with. So you can only, from my point of view, you can only see that as a positive.
Yeah, definitely. I think something that's really noticeable, and for you guys that are watching, if you've not had a chance to see Gary's dog walk video from this morning, he spoke about this, so go and check it out on the channel. But he was sort of talking about the fact that he's going to likely come in and be the starting left wing back with very little competition at the start. So he's effectively got at the bare minimum, he's got the month of August to really make that position his own. And I think he would get at the bare minimum until January. So
Oh,
hopefully
okay.
he can really excel in getting given that opportunity in that real run of games, which is obviously something he's found kind of hard to come by, as we've said. So hopefully he can really, like I say, really kind of make that position his own and really grab this opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, from a Wednesday fan's point of view, it would be nice. He will, regardless of how much or how little he played overall during his time. And as I said, that initial impression wasn't particularly positive. He will, I think, still be held in relatively positive regard because he was part of that team that did what we did. Just what feels like it feels like 6 months ago, although it's only just over a month ago. He will be still held in quite high regard, and he was never one to be outspoken or rock the boat. He always seemed to be, someone that the players like to be around. So yeah, it would be nice to see where he can get. And per, my previous connections with your football club are people aware of. So I'd like to see him do well there as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I guess kind of talking about uncertain futures and whether people are going to make the most of their opportunities. Sheffield Wednesday. You've obviously got a new manager in. What are we looking like for next season?
Well, until today, it's been a bit of a, I don't know, continuation of a bit of a theme in that we can be a bit of a pantomime from time to time. The whole managerial merry-go-round, if you will, of who's coming, who's not, looking at the betting odds and guessing whether it's him and getting messages to say it could be this person or that person. To be honest with you, I'm just glad it's sorted now. But to be fair, today he spoke really well. He comes across as a confident guy. From what we know from when he was at Watford, the players like him. He's big on he's big on team morale and team building and make sure the players are happy and having a happy group. That's what we had last year. It's one of his biggest strengths, that inner belief and that togetherness. And he's big on that. So in that, from that point of view, he should have a relatively easy job because although the group is smaller, the core group that are there should still be as together and unified as what they were when we finished last season. So that's a real positive. The unknown is obviously he's new to our club. Yeah. We need new players. It's important of who he brings in, whether he can bring ones in that fit into that group. And then, of course, we're probably expecting a change of system as well. So there's quite a few variables. And plus, his longest job's been 9 months when he was at Watford, although he did a very good job at Watford, got them promoted out of the Championship. And then, well, we all know what happens to Watford managers after around 9-10 months, don't we?
I'm going to say 9 months at Watford is probably their record manager for the last 10 years or whatever. They can't keep holding him for that long, can they?
Maybe. I mean, I think.
Yeah, no, it's so. I guess to kind of ask you the tough question to sort of wrap it up, where do you see yourself properly finishing next season?
God, it's right now. It's. I'm not, again, like I said, I'm not a negative person, but right now it's hard. It's hard to see us going above mid-table now as we speak today, because as I said, we need strength. We need more players in. There's quite a few gone, as we already know about Jaden coming to you guys, and a few others have left. So we need to strengthen. Yeah. But if he gets the right players in, then I'd be happy with, if we can get anywhere near the playoffs, anywhere near it would be massive. And I don't want, some Wednesday fans would say I'm overly negative if I said staying in the division wouldn't be good enough. And I sort of understand where they're coming from, but you've got to be realistic. Right now, we've not got a playoff winning or a playoff potential squad right now. So it just depends how between now and the end of August goes, I think, in terms of recruitment.
Yeah.
And of course, if the manager's allowed time, I think he will be. Although, again, some might argue that pulling the plug on Darren Moore was done too soon. So yeah, there's loads of variables, and it's exciting.
That's totally fair enough.
Yeah, it's exciting and infuriating in equal measure, I think.
No, it's very true because it's a weird one with the football season now because it just feels like we're so close but so far. There's still, what is it, a month today until you play the Friday night, don't you? So is that right?
We kick off. Yeah,
So it's
we
a
kick
month.
off the
It's a
NFL
month of
against.
yesterday for you.
Yeah, Southampton on
Yeah.
Friday night, live on Sky. Yeah, so if the manager wanted any more of a spotlight, well, I don't think he could have got it because it's there in that first game against any club. I mean, I think I'm sort of hoping that James Ward-Prowse has left Southampton by then.
It would be a nice added bonus for you, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be, I think.
But no, that's absolutely brilliant. So, like I say, it really sounds like we've got a player who has the potential to achieve with us. So that's really promising, and it sounds like you're in for one heck of an interesting season. So, yeah, really, thank you very much for that, Terry. And everybody, make sure you go and check out Owls Online, see how it all implodes over the next season. And keep a watchful eye on that.
But yeah, it'll be a roller coaster. It's never boring, that's for sure.
Before I go, please make sure to hop down into the comments, pop a comment, pop a like, all of that sort of stuff. But most importantly, subscribe. We're trying to see how quickly we can go ahead and get to 1,000 subscribers. So let's see how quickly we can get to there. We've got another couple of hundred to go. And keep an eye on the YouTube channel because for those that have been listening to the pods over the last few weeks, we're getting a lot more content out on here now. So make sure to keep an eye out for that. So, yeah, Terry, thank you very much. And everybody, we shall see you later. Up the Imps.